Hey everybody, it's been a while since I've got on here with a message. I think it's been since June, but I've been going through some seasons in my life and some things, and God's been dealing with me in different things. It's just been a ride of things, but God laid something upon my heart just now as I was completing out my Bible study for the night. And I usually study the Bible in the morning, then I study it at night before I go to bed. But I was reading in the book of Job, and I've started my study in the book of Job. And I've started studying the book, and something interesting touched my heart. And I felt to give it as a message to someone in this video. And in Job chapter 1, it introduces the character of Job and who he is, or who he was, and how he served the Lord and how he had been blessed and all the things he had and all that stuff. It talks about him. Then it talks about, of course, Satan appearing before God in heaven and asking to tempt Job, and God giving him the power to. And God giving him, sorry, I'm dealing with allergies, the power to test Job and take away all of that he had. And the end of chapter 1 talks about when all these things came to pass, when all was taken from Job, and his servants come in telling him that he had lost his cattle, that he had lost his sheep, that he had lost his children and his camels and all these things, that he lost everything pretty much, that all had been taken from him. And the chapter ends with Job, after finding out this news. In verse 20 it says, "Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head." So he arose, shaved his head, and he rent his mantle, as anyone would do. I'm sure there's some fathers watching this. You found out all your kids were dead, all your possessions were destroyed, if you're a farmer, all of your farm animals were dead. You'd freak out, and you'd probably, rip your shirt, or you'd be grieved, or you'd just fall down and be so angry. But Job did rent his clothes, rent his mantle, it says, and shaved his head, and was grieved in his heart. But he didn't cry out in anger and say, "God, why have you allowed this to happen to me? God, I can't believe you. God, I'm so mad at you." Instead, what he did, it says at the end of verse 20, "and fell down upon the ground." So you read this and you think, okay, fell down upon the ground, he probably started crying out and was so angry, right? No. It seems like the human response. What does Job do? "And fell down upon the ground and worshipped." He fell down and he worshipped. You're probably thinking, he worshipped? Now, for Christians, we know that we're supposed to praise God in the midst of trials. We're supposed to, like when things like that happen to us spiritually and physically, we are supposed to fall down and just say, "God, I trust you, and whatever you're doing, I know it's all gonna make sense in the future, right at the end of the road." But if we really think about it, it's hard to, I'm sure for unbelievers that may be listening to this, you may be thinking, or somebody, even just anybody, maybe even Christians, it'd be hard to worship God when you just lost everything. You've been faithful to God your whole life, and He tests you like this. How could you worship a God that would do that? But Job understood that God was doing it for a reason. It was a test, and it was a trial of faith. And what does he say? He says, "Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And it says in and out this chapter, in all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Now there's been moments in our life when something bad has happened to us, something didn't go the way we thought it was going to go, things didn't turn out the way we wanted them to, and we said, how could you let this happen to me, God? How could you do this? We've even said that as Christians because we don't understand. But Job gives an example that when these things happen, no matter how hard it is, we should fall down and worship. Folks, I've said this before, but worship changes things. Worship changes things, and that we should worship at all at all times. And worship in all things. So when bad things come our way, we should worship like Job does here in this text. He fell down and he worshiped God after he had just learned that he had lost his children, he had lost his animals, he had lost all that he had. His servants had been killed. After learning all that, he still falls down and says, blessed be the name of the Lord. He has taken away, he has given, and he has taken away. He blesses God after being cursed, after being tried and having these things taken away from him. And that's what we as Christians need to do. In the midst of trials and in the midst of tribulations, we need to fall down and just worship and say, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I trust you. So if you're watching this video right now and something's happened in your life that you can't understand, and you don't know how this situation is going to go, you feel like you're being tested and tried, and you don't know why God's doing this to you, just fall down and worship. Just trust in the name of the Lord. Just trust in God. Because we see in this story and many others that when God is testing you, it's for a reason. And at the end of that test and trial, someday God's going to bless you back, or someday it's going to make sense. So just trust in God right now. Just trust in him and worship him, and just trust in his name. In the midst of trials, cry out and worship and say, God, I don't understand this. I don't understand why this has happened to me, but I trust you. Blessed be your name. Do that, and you will be blessed, and you will, one day you'll understand. If you'll just trust, and if you'll just say, God, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why you've done this or allowed this to happen. But blessed be your name. I know it'll make sense sometime in the future. It'll be easier to trust in him, and it'll be easier to go through this. And you will see why God did what he did. Just worship in the midst of trials. God bless y'all.